We're now recording and everyone from the lobby is admitted into the meeting.
Thank you. Welcome to the public meeting of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. My name is Annalise Tour and I'm the panel chair today. The other panel members are David Epstein, who's an expert, Marjorie Ferguson, and also an expert, and the community representative is Phil Young. The panel has adopted public meeting guidelines, which are published on the council's website. These include that these note that the panel has been briefed on each item by council staff prior to the meeting and undertaken site inspections independently or electronically. Today we have a number of people registered to address the panel at the public meeting. The order of speakers will be firstly objectors, followed by those supporting the application on their representative. Each registered speaker will be given 3 minutes and any extension will be at my discretion as chair. I'm noting, though, that in relation to the public meeting item 4.1, there are a number of speakers registered to speak. So I'll emphasise with those speakers that we have your submissions, we have read your submissions. The application is recommended for refusal. So in terms of the comments that you're making, if you could mainly focus on the reasons for refusal and whether those adequately reflect your concerns or if there are changes to those reasons. Keeping in mind that, yes, as I've said before, that the panel has read all your submissions that are made in response to the application. So once we've heard from all the speakers, the public meeting will be closed and the panel will move into private deliberations to determine all the matters on the agenda. The panel's determinations and the reasons will be published on council's website, normally within 2 working days. You need to be aware that the public meeting is being video and audio recorded, and that the recordings will be published on council's website after the meeting. In relation to the agenda, we have asked the item. First of all, there's the previous meeting minutes, which were the meeting of the 4th of October. That's item 2.1. Just noting that the panel chair of that meeting has approved those minutes. In relation to item 1 on the agenda, that's a conflict of interest. All panel members have been asked to declare whether they have a conflict of interest in relation to any items on today's agenda, and I could confirm that there's no conflicts of interest have been declared. That would preclude any panel member from determining any items on today's agenda. In relation to item 3, there are no category 3 applications on today's agenda. So then we move to item 4, which is the development applications on today's public meeting agenda. Item 4.1 is the DA for 2A Allen Avenue, Bilgola Beach, and that's the item whereby there are a number of speakers registered to speak. So the first speaker is Karen Buckingham from the Planning Progress Association. So Karen, if you're there.
Annalise, I can't see Karen in the meeting. Would you like me to call her in?
You could, but we'll move on to John Sexton while you're doing that.
Okay.
So John, if you're there.
John is on mute. If you could unmute yourself, John.
Yep. Okay, how's that?
That's good, great.
Fantastic. Okay, the right Carol is because Karen is because she
I'm not on mute.
was speaking about 15 minutes ago to join. So okay, well, I'll go first if that's okay.
Yeah.
So firstly, thank you, the chair and panel members, for giving me the opportunity to speak on item 4.1. I am John Sexton, and with my wife Jan are the owners of 4B Allen Avenue and live immediately adjacent to the north of the site. Most of my key points have already been addressed in the previous submissions made by Karen Buckingham of Planning Progress on my behalf, and I ask you to consider the points made by Karen in her address to you today. As expressed, we will be significantly impacted by the proposed development, and I'd also like to confirm our support for the recommendation for refusal. I can also confirm that the previous landscaped area to the front of the subject site in the location of the unlawful tennis court was a very well landscaped area, and it really did add to the quality of the area. The proposed development only includes approximately 3.5% landscaped area. I feel this degree of lack of landscaping should be referred to in the refusal reason. And the only other point that I would like to bring to your attention is that in the list of notification of submissions at page 5 of the assessment report, planning progress is listed without reference to 4B Allen Avenue. I wanted to highlight this and for it to be included in the records that the occupiers of 4B Allen Avenue, immediately adjacent to the site, have objected. And should you have any queries for me, can they please, or any queries at all, can they please be limited to my capacity as a neighbouring occupier, and any technical planning matters be referred to Karen. And I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, John. Just clarifying, because on my list of speakers, it's got you down as 2B Allen Avenue, but
No.
you said you're 4B.
4B Allen Avenue, yes.
Okay, and what you've said is that the planning report didn't reference your objections. 4B, it presumably put you down as 2B.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely 4B, yes.
Okay, I'll just check. There is a bit of interference, so could I emphasize that
Yeah.
anyone who's not speaking, if you can just have your be on mute.
Be on mute.
Where's mute?
Well, if you're speaking, you don't need to be on mute, but otherwise press the microphone button, and that will put you onto mute. All right, I'll just check if there's any questions from the panel members of Mr. Sexton.
No, not for me, thank you.
No. All right, thank you. Have we got Karen yet?
Annalise, I need to call Karen in. She is available, so I'll just phone her mobile now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello.
Karen, this is the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. I'm going to leave you in the hands of our panel chair.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Karen. We've already heard from John Sexton, and now we're hearing from you. You have 3 minutes, and what I said in my opening was just to try and not repeat what is in submissions to any great extent, because there are a number of speakers that are listed here today.
Of course, and thank you, Chair and panel members, for giving me the opportunity to speak to item 4.1, and apologies for that technical issue I was having. I'm speaking on behalf of my client, John Sexton, of 4B Allen Avenue, Bilgola Beach, who you've just spoken to, who lives immediately to the north of the site. My client would be significantly impacted by the proposed development as detailed in the written submissions that you would have already have read, dated the 31st of October 2022 and the 29th of August 2023. I've reviewed the assessment report and would like to confirm my client's support for the assessment and recommendation to refuse subject DA. I do have, however, an additional concern that the assessment report and recommended refusal reasons need to address. In summary, the assessment report is relatively silent on the subject of the tennis court, which does not have planning consent. As detailed in the previous submission letters prepared on behalf of my client, the existing tennis court is the subject of a building certificate which was issued on the 1st of February 2021. Prior to the construction of the tennis court, the land to the front of the site was a well-landscaped garden area, which added significantly to the character of the area and was in accordance with the Bilgola Beach locality. Although the tennis court was constructed unlawfully, the issuing of the BIC prevents any compliance to remove the structure until the certificate expires. My client needs to ensure that all planning records are very clear on the fact that the tennis court does not have planning consent and that DA needs to be submitted prior to the expiry of the certificate. The previous DA at the subject site under DA 2021-1900 sought consent for the construction of a fence to existing tennis courts. And further to objection from my client, the description was amended to read construction of fence, and this was to avoid any confusion and planning history that would misconstrue the tennis court as having consent. To clarify the planning history regarding the existing tennis court, it is requested that refusal reason 7 refer to the tennis court as the existing tennis court which requires planning consent. Additional commentary is also requested to be provided in the decision notes. So to summarise, our recommendations and requests to the panel is to support Council's recommendation to refuse the DA and to amend refusal reason 7 as described. And I can send in my script for you to have a look at that text if that's of help to the panel. Thank you for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel members?
No.
Right.
No, thank you.
So just clarifying, Karen, in terms of the needing planning consent, that would not be able to approve the works. It would only be able to approve the, any application would be just to use what's already there as for the purpose of a recreation tennis court. Because the works have been constructed without consent.
That's right. They've been constructed without consent, but because they have the building information certificates in place,
they can remain at this point in time. Yeah.
It can remain at this point in time, but in terms of interpretation of that planning history, it is very important for that to be quite clear in the fact that it doesn't have consent. Because otherwise, looking back on planning history, it could be misconstrued to have consent by default in terms, for example, of the previous application that was for tennis court fencing, whereas the tennis court is without the BIC unlawful development.
All right, thank you.
Thank
the
you.
next speaker is Rick Osborne.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep, good. My name is Rick Osborne. Judy and I live at 8 the Serpentine, which is directly behind the proposed development. This development attempts to squeeze Wimbledon and a four-level luxury house into what I see as a big shoebox. 277 residents and beachgoers have signed a petition to say this is not in the public interest. The Pittwater LEP, as you know, says that any new development should be compatible with the neighbouring houses. It is not. It will tower over every other house in Allen Avenue and look into houses on Bilgola Avenue, as well as looking into our property and our neighbour's property up on the Serpentine. Can you imagine a rooftop swimming pool which we can almost touch from our boundary fence? There are no other rooftop pools in the whole of Bilgola. I have sent you 2 images today of height poles. These height poles have changed a number of times, but this is what they are at the moment. We don't know what they measure, and we have asked for certification. We were promised that we would get this from Greg Boston, their town planner, a week and a half ago, and we've received absolutely nothing. In the absence of clear understanding of what our view loss is, we have engaged at our expense Mr. John Aspinall, who is a view loss expert, and he has submitted a report and will speak today. There is one other area that I'd like to touch on, and that is the assumptive plan by Surveyor John Lowe. This is an attempt to show what the ground may have looked like in the time of, say, Captain Cook. It's wrong. He says it's guesswork. He hasn't signed it, and it is used as the basis for the applicant to argue the height and scale of their development. we engaged a surveyor at our expense to survey the forgotten property, number 6 Milgola Avenue. This property, we believe, has never been excavated, had no reason to be excavated. And it came in at the level where John Lowe guessed 11.5, it came in at 1.5 meters lower. I have submitted that survey. There are EGLs, of course, at 8.4 to 9.4 that are in any number of surveys, including one from John Lowe himself that is included in the flood mitigation report. I won't touch on landscaping, that's been touched on, but a BIC is not an authorisation. And I would just finish by saying this is not in the public interest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members?
Thank you.
No. Thank you very much. We have Anthony Munro speaking on behalf of her mother.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I am speaking on behalf of my mother and my brother Andrew and his wife Marion and Jeremy, who all live at number 10 The Serpentine. The house has been in our family for over 60 years and it remains an important focal point for my family and my brother. There's a bit of background noise.
Yeah, I think that could be you, Mr. Osborne. Can you just go on to mute?
Okay, I'll attempt to do so.
At the top of your screen, Rick, you might see something that says MIC.
Can you
Let me
see?
just that's good.
Yes, that was you. Thank you.
Sorry.
So that's okay. Yeah, so the house has been in our family for over 60 years and it remains an important focal point for all of us. We feel that much of the discussion between the applicant and the council to date has been about the excessive height of this development, yet the rear setback proposal is perhaps even more excessive. If the development was moved forward, it would address many of the amenity issues that we and others have raised. We agree with what council has said about the benefits of moving the development forward on page 34 of its assessment report. It says, quote, "A dwelling with a more compliant rear setback would be positioned to a greater extent on the flatter part of the site," and we agree with that, "and would likely necessitate an overall height more comparable with the adjacent dwellings." I would like to add that moving the development forward would also necessitate an overall better alignment with adjacent buildings, achieving a more consistent streetscape. But as you know, and people have already mentioned, that the application is not just for a new dwelling, but it's also for the retention of the existing tennis court. And the statement of environmental effects actually says that the development has been designed for...
I'll just have to interrupt you there because there is still that background noise.
And that's
so
no worries.
Can everyone please ensure that they're on mute? All right, that's gone now. So
Yep,
all
no
right.
worries.
Keep going, Anthony.
That's okay. So I was just saying that the statement of environmental effects actually says in the introduction that the development has been designed for the retention of the existing tennis court, necessitating a significant concession on the rear setback. But we believe that, you know, an individual's desire to preserve a structure should perhaps not be relevant to any planning decision, particularly where the impacts of its consideration will be felt by the residents around the site. And as noted by Karen, we're unsure whether council has addressed the grassroots question about the relevance of the tennis court, either specifically or more generally in its assessment of the public interest. There is actually another reason the owner seeks a 90% concession on the rear setback. Stated that the owner desires to gain water views. A recent marketing photo taken from the existing home at about 5 meters above the excavated ground level shows that the owner already has very pleasing ocean views. I actually submitted a photograph on Monday to the panel showing the existing views from about 5 meters above ground level. If the rear setback control is not enforced, these existing ocean views would be both preserved and enriched. The owner would actually lose nothing and gain everything. Yet our views and those of other neighbours would be significantly diminished. We believe that situation would not amount to an equitable preservation of views as required by the DCP, and I refer specifically to D3.7. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members?
No, thank
No.
you.
Thank you. So the next speaker is Catherine Naptra. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. And you're speaking on behalf of your mother at 2 Allen Avenue, Bilgola.
That was close with my name. Good afternoon. My name's Catherine Naprat. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Margaret Morgan, and myself. My mother owns 2 Allen Avenue, Bilgola Beach.
David Epstein, could you please put yourself on mute? Thank you.
Here we go again. She lives right next door on the south side of the applicant. She's enjoyed peaceful tranquility living there for the last 32 years. On Monday, I submitted some photos for you to refer to regarding my address. Our objection to the next door DA is related to several issues, how it impacts us and how it is not in keeping for the character of the neighbourhood. This application is trying to fit a whole resort with tennis court, pool, jacuzzi, gym, office, formal dining and lounge rooms, multiple entertaining areas on a residential block that is just not big enough to accommodate all these without dramatically impacting us and other existing residents. The applicant wants to build up higher than the 2 levels that are the desired character of the local area according to the C4 environmental zone plan, ignore the building envelope, not adhere to height rules and side setbacks, and do excessive excavation that in their own report says it could cause catastrophic damage to our house and foundations. By breaching the 8-metre height by approximately 3.6 metres, the proposed house would look directly into our living room, sunroom, kitchen and outdoor entertaining areas. Pretty much most of the general use areas in our house would be impacted by loss of privacy and access to the sun. Having a pool and entertaining areas on their level 3 would cause noise right next door to our general use areas and 2 bedrooms at any time of the night and day. We have enjoyed privacy and peace and quiet for all the years we have lived here, but an unsympathetic design could destroy everything we most value. And this design is an unsympathetic design. Locating the driveway, garage door and underground car park where they are attempting to will impact noisily on my mother's main bedroom, and car lights shining in my mother's main bedroom will definitely affect sleep for anyone in that room. This house design is too tall and too wide. It is unnecessary to design a house like this on a block like this. The applicants are not taking into consideration how this design will adversely impact us and other residents. Approving a 4-level house on this excessive bulk and scale in our tiny beach enclave will set the precedence for any development for our suburb. It is not designed to respect and complement the heritage of our area. The proposed building's non-compliances contribute to the unreasonable visual privacy, acoustic privacy and solar access for us. The excessive excavation could cause risks to our property that we should not have to endure. Altering the unsympathetic design by lowering the height of the building dramatically, building to the envelope rule and side setbacks, building based on the correct ground height, and I know this has been mentioned by others, possibly relocating the house, and by not needing excessive excavation, the applicants can own a visually appealing house that suits their needs and is low impact to us, other existing residents and the local community. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members?
No.
No.
No, thank
The
you.
next speaker is John Aspinall, and you're speaking on behalf of 8 the Serpentine.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and panel members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I am representing the residents at number 8 and number 10, the Serpentine, who undertook to engage our services to do a visual impact assessment. That's the work we do in the Land Environment Court, have been doing so for 20 years. We based it around the Land Environment Court requirements for generating photomontages, and I believe the panel do have that report with them. The outcome was that the impact and view loss to the two addresses of these residents is classed as severe under the tenacity ruling, being of large amounts of water view, beach view, the northern and southern headlands from various locations. Now, the areas of non-compliance are not minor by any degree, and they are the main cause of the view loss. Only 30% of the site being used, a very tall building exceeding the height limit by almost 50%, and the side and rear setbacks by 100%. The step 4 of tenacity, could a more skillful design be engaged in order to alleviate some of these problems? Almost certainly, but I think the bigger issue here is the site itself, and an unapproved tennis court, meaning that the buildable portion of that site for such an extensive brief as the applicant has is very small, and the only option for them is to go up. But that is totally unacceptable for neighbours and residents on all sides. And rather than being in danger of setting a precedent purely for Bilgola, it sets a precedent for the whole of the Northern Beaches in terms of blatantly disregarding planning instruments and getting approval. That's the basis for me agreeing with the refusal in this instance. In addition, I'll just keep it brief, the height poles that are in place don't appear to have any relevance either to the existing design as lodged with council or to a lowering of that house. I don't know, and I don't believe Mr. Osborne was able to get any information as to where those poles were positioned in relation to the new plan or their height, but you'll be able to see from the visual report that we submitted, they don't bear any meaningful relationship to what would be built. And briefly too, I would back up, again, relying on those images, the potential for extreme visual and acoustic impact for several of the neighbours. The lining of the pool almost aligns with the garden of number 8, and there's no way of diminishing the noise without solid massing of screening, which would further impact on views. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but in summary, on the grounds of visual impact and view loss, I fully support Council's recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
All right, thank you very much. And the last speaker is Annalise Carlson.
Good afternoon, panel members. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we
good. My name is Annalise Carlson. I'm the planner representing the owners of number 8 and number 10, the Serpentine. One of the matters of concern to us is the compatibility of that development with the existing and the desired future character of Bilgola Beach. Bilgola Beach is a unique locality within the Northern Beaches with direct access to the beach. And the controls reflect this uniqueness, and by requiring a maximum of 2 stories and a height control of 8 meters, it identifies it as a visually protection area demanding a different set of constraints to any building design in that area. Now, the applicant is seeking a variation to the maximum building height, and the degree of non-compliance is disputed in this case due to the interpretation of the definition of building height. Now, council has touched on this, and I don't agree with the applicant's approach in using an extrapolated measurement. The measurement of height is to be taken from the ground level that is existing, and that word cannot be ignored. There are existing grounds surrounding the existing building footprint, and there are existing finished floor levels that can be relied upon consistent with the Merman decision. More importantly than the numerical non-compliance is the impact of such non-compliance or the massing of that. The proposed massing is considered to overwhelm the surrounding spaces by virtue of its placement so close to the boundaries, especially the rear boundary, which significantly contributes to the view loss as mentioned. Now, where the view loss occurs as a result of a non-compliance, even a moderate impact, which Council's report notes, may not be considered reasonable. It becomes less a question of how much views are lost, but rather, is that view loss reasonable? And the proposed development, in my view, does not meet the reasonableness test because the built form is inconsistent with what could reasonably be anticipated by the controls. Moreover, the proposal is not considered skillful design because it allows for excessive floor slab depths and roof heights above the upper level ceiling levels. Now, the desire to gain more views and retain the tennis court necessitates the sitting of the dwelling within the rear setback area and not on the more flatter parts of the site where, as Council rightly pointed out, any proposal would likely have a more comparable height to that of the adjoining dwellings. Now, the significant departure from the landscape control is mostly due to the retention of that unauthorized tennis court or the desire to retain the tennis court. But it is exacerbated by the extent of the excavation proposed. Now, the failure to allow for that appropriate landscaping is also a failure to allow for appropriate density. And Council's assessment report acknowledges that the proposed volume of excavation is extensive and it does not diminish the disturbance of the site. Now, if the development was appropriately sized, the extent of the excavation would not be required. In summary, we concur with the assessment report, which concludes that the proposal in the form presented is inappropriate and unsuitable for the subject site and should be refused as per the reasons given in the assessment report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. So they're the registered speakers. There are no speakers registered on behalf of the applicant. So that concludes item 4.1. We'll now move to item 4.2, which is 54 Greycliff Street, Queenscliff. And we have no objectors registered to speak. And then on behalf of the applicant, we have Rebecca England, the planner. If you're there, Ms. England.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just making myself available if the panel had any questions. We support the recommendation as per the agenda. As I said, we'll just make ourselves available if you have any questions.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I'll just start with a couple of questions. So just clarifying the extent of what's being retained and what's being removed. So I understand from the plans that there are a certain number of walls that are being retained and a certain number that are being removed. The floors, are they being retained or removed?
The floors are being retained.
Okay. And then in terms of clarifying the trees that are being removed, in the architectural plans it has 3 trees being removed, but I think through the RFI process, that number of trees has been reduced. So can you just clarify exactly what trees are being retained?
Yes, I apologise. I'll just double check that. Sorry, I don't have that answer handy. And I don't think it went back to landscape.
That's right.
Referring. The master set, it's still the same trees that are proposed for removal. In terms, oh, sorry, he's the client.
Sorry, there's, I believe that the pool was reduced in size, and that there was, I think there was one of the trees there that was going to be impacted by the pool will be remaining.
Okay. Well, we can look into that. Also, in terms of, there's a condition about 2 replacement trees. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. In the lower slope. There's also been a suggestion that in the front area where a tree is being removed, that there be a replacement tree in the front setback area as well. So is there any objection to a condition along those lines?
No, not from us.
And then in terms of the lift overrun, there's no overrun shown. So we're presuming that there's a no overrun, that it's a hydraulic lift. Again, conditioning that for certainty. Any objection to that?
No, that's my understanding. That's why all the plant equipment is at the base in the excavated area.
Yeah. I'll just see if there's any other questions from panel members.
No, not from me. Thank you.
Not from me either. Thanks.
All right. And Mr. Kassar, you were just here for answering questions as well. So
Absolutely.
if there's no further questions, then that's the end of that item. And that concludes the public meeting at 12:37. So thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.